What's up, Taiwan? I'm Eric Gao, bringing you the news from here in Taipei. Families of Taiwanese soldiers who suffered in the country's military are pushing back against President Lai Ching-te's plan to reinstate military courts. They say military personnel's rights must be protected and that an appeals commission should be reestablished. Rick Lau reports.
It's been just over a week since Taiwan's President Lai Ching-te announced sweeping new measures to counter what he says are China's increasing attempts to annex Taiwan and to infiltrate the country. Among those, he's bringing back military courts to weed out military personnel spying for China, of which there are currently dozens of cases. But there's nervousness around courts like these. They were dismantled more than a decade ago amid public outcry over unjust verdicts, wrongful convictions, and a lack of transparency. Now, families who say they were let down by the military justice system in the past are speaking out.
穿同样的军服的人，他们会真正的审判吗？他们会真的站在公平正义的角度来审判吗？以往就是没有公平正义过，所以我还是会担心害怕。
Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense have acknowledged this lack of public trust and this checkered past. They said this will be an entirely new system that observes legal procedures and protects human rights. But the pushback here demonstrates the challenges facing Taiwan as it looks to counter increasing pressure from China while also reassuring the public that it can protect their freedom and human rights. Alex Chen and Rick Lauert in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan's government watchdog agency is fining former presidential candidate Ko Wen-je for violating political donation rules. He'll have to pay over $100,000 and forfeit $1.7 million in assets. The control ran investigators Ko's donation records from May 2023 and February 2024, finding several inconsistencies and identifying 20,000 unlawful transactions. Ko was first detained incommunicado in September last year on charges of corruption linked to his second term as Taipei mayor and around the 2024 presidential election. Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party says it will assist a mass legislator recall movement.
对于人民自主发起的罢免行动，民进党一贯的立场就是完全尊重公民团体的自主性，并提供必要的协助还有资源。
Supporters of both the ruling DPP and the opposition Kuomintang have initiated campaigns to recall each other's lawmakers. DPP Secretary General Lin Youcang says the DPP will now offer its local branch offices to help civic groups gather signatures. He says the DPP will also recruit and train volunteers to protect people who want to sign petitions and to help publicize the recall campaigns. When asked if this meant that the DPP was fully mobilizing in support of the recall movement, he had this to say.
民进党从头到尾就是站在协助跟资源的这个角度。 公民团体才是主体，那刚刚也特别说到，因为现在公民团体在各地碰到非常多受到干扰、刁难，这些都是一些反民主的一个状况。
As of March 13th, recall petitions against 35 KMT-affiliated lawmakers have entered the second stage. Over a dozen petitions against DPP lawmakers have yet to pass the first stage and require further documentation. The U.S. and Ukrainian presidents have both taken to social media to express their satisfaction with a recent phone call, saying that their chat has brought the Russia-Ukraine war closer to ceasefire, despite some sticking points. Reese Ayers reports.
Positive, frank, and most substantive. That's how Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy describes his Wednesday phone call with US President Donald Trump. A complete 180 from last month's very public bust-up.
Right now, you don't know you're playing.
And it's a glowing review mirrored by the White House.
Today, President Trump and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy had a fantastic phone conversation.
They spent roughly an hour on the phone, around half the time Trump gave Russian President Putin on Tuesday, with both agreeing the conversation was a positive step towards peace that could begin with an end to strikes on energy infrastructure. It's something Putin has said he'd agree to too, short of accepting a full 30-day ceasefire proposed by the US. But the energy ceasefire alone could be an exciting prospect for Trump. Zelenskyy confirmed he discussed the possibility of the US taking a stake in Europe's largest power plant, currently under Russian control.
Президент запитав, а якщо буде розуміння, що Америка може це відновити, я йому сказав так, якщо можна модернізувати, вкладати гроші, тощо, ми готові це обговорювати з вами.
And while Zelenskyy has said he thinks lasting peace can be achieved with the help of the US, and he's eager to expand any ceasefire to include civilian infrastructure too, he's also warning that Ukraine is ready to retaliate if Moscow violates any deal, saying the issue of Ukraine's occupied territories is still a sticking point.
Будемо захищати максимально Україну в цих питаннях. Але нам буде дуже непросто. Президент Трамп і сьогодні, від мене абсолютно він розуміє, що юридично ми не визнаємо ніякі території.
Having since restored intelligence sharing after relations soured weeks ago, US and Ukrainian representatives are set to meet in Saudi Arabia in a matter of days, aiming to bring both sides closer to a full ceasefire. Eason Pan and Rees for TaiwanPlus.
For more on the ceasefire negotiations, Alec McDonald spoke to International Affairs Professor Zhang Tingting from Mingchuan University.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has now spoken to U.S. President Donald Trump. So what was the outcome of this phone call?
I think this call is quite important, and that's a good sign, especially compared with the conflict 3 weeks ago between Donald Trump and Vladimir Zelenskyy. So it's a good sign because the U.S. and Ukraine, especially, they are aligned together. They, according to President Trump, they say they are on track, trying to reach a ceasefire. So it's a good sign. That means they resume the talks and they come back to cooperate together to work for another round of the talk. So I think definitely it's important, especially for the relation between the United States and also Ukraine.
So that comes off the back of Trump pushing Russian President Vladimir Putin to agree to a ceasefire that was broken only hours later. What can we learn from this series of events?
From President Donald Trump, it was very clear he's trying to convince Putin to go for a ceasefire, a total ceasefire agreement. But obviously, Putin didn't really respond to a total ceasefire. Ultimately, he just kind of doing a favor to President Trump for temporarily partial ceasefire. But then after several hours, he just broke ceasefire. But actually, from the Russian newspapers, you will see that they accused of Ukraine who broke the ceasefire, the partial ceasefire first. So it's not clear what Putin was trying to do, but it's obvious that he's playing tactics of his own game, and his stance has never changed. He insists on several issues, and he put actually more conditions if they are going to reach a ceasefire agreement.
At this point, it feels like there's two different paths that the U.S. administration is walking down when talking to Russia and then when talking to Ukraine. Have we reached a point where we can begin to reconcile these 2 points and we see a clear goal that the U.S. administration is aiming for?
From my personal point of view, the U.S. path and track is actually more aligned with Ukraine now, and with Putin. Putin is just, telling what Donald Trump what he wants, and he's firm on his stance. So he plays the tactics, and basically, from my points, Russia and the U.S. they are not really on the same track. But this time, we can see that the U.S. and Ukraine, they are back on the same track.
That was Professor Zhang Tingting from Mingchuan University. Over 100,000 people have backed a petition to give the harshest sentences possible to child abusers who kill their victims. That's as 2 nannies go on trial for the death of an infant in their care, one in a string of abuse cases in recent years. John Van Trieste reports.
A crowd of hundreds shouts in rage outside the Taipei District Court. Inside, 2 nannies are on trial for the 2023 death of baby Kai Kai, entrusted to their care, but allegedly abused to death at their hands. As reporters shout questions at the accused, the people outside are calling on the court to give the pair the heaviest sentence the law will allow. Some have come from more than an hour away just to be here. This is a case that stunned all of Taiwan.
我们原本是要送给保姆，在找保姆了。我爸妈听到就说不用，就是不敢相信保姆啦。
身为一个妈妈，我真的很心动。每个孩子都是上天赐下来的宝贝，有多少人生不出小孩？有多少人渴望小孩？
This is just part of a wider reckoning with child abuse in Taiwan. Among the more extreme cases from recent years is that of a kindergarten worker found guilty last year of over 200 counts of child sexual abuse. There have been mass scares, too, with allegations preschools were drugging children, spreading panic in 2023. But the death of infant Kai Kai may be a turning point, and many feel enough is enough. 110,000 people have signed a petition to mandate harsher penalties for abusers who kill children, life in prison without parole, or even the death penalty. The petition's only been out there for a month, but it already has enough support to require a government response.
年内幼童罪去年已经完成修法，加重相关的刑责规定。至于是否再行修法，本部尊重相关的修法建议，妥适研议。
If the law is changed, it won't apply in Kai Kai's case. Even the final government response won't come until mid-May, a few days after judges are slated to announce their verdict. But the petition is one sign of just how strong fears for children's safety and disgust at their mistreatment have grown. Klein Wong and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Get ready to pay more for power. Taiwan's economy minister says electricity will likely get more expensive. J.W. Guo was responding to lawmakers who are grilling him about the profitability of state-run firm Taipower, the country's sole electricity supplier. Taipower has reported billions of dollars in losses. It also lost its government subsidies, part of a slash to the general budget. The CEO of electronics firm Pegatron recently suggested that keeping nuclear power could save Taipower money, as Taiwan looks to shutter its last remaining reactor this year. And Guo did not rule out this idea.
如果这个大院通过这个核管法修改过了以后，我们会遵照这个大院的这个通过的这个部分来进行。它的运转是不是让我们台电可以赚钱？我想我们这个还要再评估一下。
Guo says that while electricity prices must rise, it will be at a lower rate than regional neighbors like South Korea. A new internet cable connecting Taiwan to the U.S. and the Philippines has reached Taiwan's east coast. The undersea cable is more than 13,000 kilometers long and stretches from California to Guam to Taiwan's Dawu and Taidong and to the Philippines. It should go online in May. Taiwan is set to have 16 international cables by the end of the year. Almost all its internet connections come from these cables, currently relying on 14 international lines. Some cables have been damaged multiple times by China-linked ships, cutting off communications and raising concerns about Taiwan's security.
你有多一些的海缆被建立起来了之后呢，那你相对来讲，你要被完全孤立的几率也就会变比较小，让我们的韧性提升的一个方式。
Taiwan is also exploring other backup communications like satellites and microwave systems. And thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Grab our app to get our latest updates sent to you on your mobile device. Finally, take a look at this collection showcasing the legacy of 20th century black artists at Paris's Pompidou Center. I'm Eric Gao. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, follow TaiwanPlus on socials. Pika!